joined. This is part two of two, probably, maybe three, but of React Router demonstrations. Part 1A, it sort of lit on fire and crashed. So this is part two. The original part two sort of fizzled. This one's the real one. And we're gonna start this one off with a little bit of a demo. And what we used here as a domain is the Women's World Cup. And really, I'm focused on the US team. And I just chose that because it's an easy sort of, there's a team, it has a lot of players, and we can use that to sort of show the demonstration. This is a lecture, by the way, in React Router. And our goals by the end of today, we would like to have a better understanding of router props and what they are and how we use them. We should have a good idea of how to use route components, links or nav link components, and how to do some basic nested routing so that we can have an application that routes restfully on the front end using entirely React. In other words, a single page application that never refreshes as soon as it's loaded, and it's all contained within itself, but we see nice URLs, nice URL outputs that reflect where we are and what we're doing at any given time. So that's the goal of this particular lecture. So the first thing I'm gonna do is start out with a demo. Check out my demo that I built. Oh boy.
Howard, one quick thing.
Yep.
So basically on what you just said, from the back end perspective, there are no views. You have controller and models, and all views are from the front end.
That is 100% correct.
Okay.
So everything that I'm building, everything that you see comes from React, comes from JavaScript. And the back end is responsible for maintaining, holding our data so that when we shut down our servers or we shut down our computer, we come back the next day, the data is still there. And it's responsible for things like building and maintaining, I should say creating, updating the CRUD actions, right, of the actual data that our application relies on. The front end holds on to whatever state it needs to show you the things it needs to show you. And it asks the backend for information on an as-needed basis. But we never refresh. We just take that JSON formatted response and we do something with it to change what the user sees. So I'm just going to stash this. I just deleted some comments, but forget it. Okay, git checkout demo. All right, so here's where we're going. So here's where we were, right? We showed players, teams, and we were able to sort of toggle back and forth. If you watched that first video, this is kind of where we left off. I can see all the players, I can see all the teams, and I can click player and teams toggle. What I'd like to be able to do is this. So I've checked out to my demo branch. So we're going from here to something a little bit more like this. So now I'm going to yarn start. And it should automatically kick in, right? There we go. Okay, and so now what I'd like to be able to do is dig a little bit deeper, which means I'm trying to time what I'm saying here with yarn start actually starting here, my server. Come on. While this is loading, I'll mention that I added a backend. So I did add a backend because sometimes it's nice to be able to see how we would actually use this type of thing with an asynchronous action like a fetch request. So I did actually add a backend that currently just holds the players for the US team. That's it, and I'm happy with that for now. I would like to get like a teams belongs to team has many players, player belongs to team, show that relationship, get another level deep, but this will be good enough for tonight. I don't think we're going to get past like one level of nesting, although that'd be nice. That would be a good next topic, I suppose. All right, so here's where we're going to end up. We're somewhere where when I land here, I can choose from my nav bar one particular component. Notice the URL updates with everywhere I go. Appropriately. So I've got players, that's my index, new player, that's my new player, teams, which is my teams index, about, which is, these about and home are really placeholders for demonstration. In other words, a couple of general links that don't have anything to do with the other resources. And I have them here so that we can do some nesting demonstration that actually makes a little bit more sense. They're really very trivial and contrived, but that's the idea, right? These are just as simple as they look. Each one is just like a sentence of a component. That's all it is. But it's there so you can see like we're eventually going to pull players and new player away and do something else with them so this makes a little more sense. This button, by the way, was just a demo of with router and history.push in case you were wondering what that's all about, left over from the first one. Okay, any questions about where we're going with this? This is the demo of what we'd like to end up with 50 minutes from now. Anything that you're like, oh man, I see I'm missing something, or there's something else that I don't see that I'd like to see, or any questions about where we're heading?
Yeah, just a small question. So
Sure.
when you display all these players, I believe that you could click on a player and see her information, right?
Yes, yes.
Now, is there a way also to delete, to update, etc.?
So I don't have that in this demo, but where I have new player, or actually it would probably be something like once I've clicked on a player, maybe I have a link or something down here, one to delete or one to update, or it's very common that I would have an edit link here, which would transition this back into a form preloaded with in this case, Alyssa's information. And then when I'm in that edit view, maybe then I have an option to delete, which would sort of prevent that accidental deletion, or sort of work toward preventing someone accidentally clicking delete and deleting someone entirely.
Then it will be, and then it will be posted to the backend.
And then you would send a patch or a delete request to your backend. Yep. So
Okay.
so what I'd like to show tonight is a post request, and you should be able to take. I mean, the difference between a post and a patch and a delete. Well, the difference between a post and a patch is more or less just the method. You still have to send data the exact same way, and the difference between those two and a delete is you don't have to send any information. And again, it's just the verb, right? So you have to have a body whether we post or whether we patch. And then we just need for a delete request, we don't have to send any information necessarily.
Right. Thank you.
So if we show the post, hopefully that'll be enough of a demonstration to sort of take that information and apply it. Okay, so any questions right now hanging on? So I'm going to go back to master. Master. And then I'm going to, let's just create a new branch, check out round 2, we'll call it. Round 2. Some of you know what that means. Okay, so round 2, we're starting from master, kind of where we left off at the end of the last lecture. But like I mentioned, I added a backend. So let me just show you a few other things that I have added to make all this work. And okay, so my backend exists, which means that I have added a fetch request on component mount. Oops, that's way too small, right? Tell me when it's good. Is that okay, or you want a little bigger? Is that better?
Yeah,
That's great.
Okay, perfect. I added, and we can take a vote on this. I added a utilities class for my API, and this is a pretty common practice. Something like adding a class to extract away some of the ugliness or the number of lines of code that you would have for sending fetch requests. And it's not even just that; it's also a little bit in line with single responsibility principle. And all I'm doing right now, anyway, all I have is some static stuff. Static just means that belongs at the class level effectively. I've got 2 methods. One's called get, one's called post. And then I've got some sort of almost like class constants described here. When I show this, are you like, this is no way, let's not do this. Let's just write the fetch request in line, please, for now. And I can do that. Or if you're happy with this, then we'll keep this format and we'll sort of update these as needed and just use these. What do we think? Am I, and please be honest, you can send me a private message too if you're like, no, please don't do this. So it's a level of abstraction that hopefully makes sense. And if it doesn't, if it's too much, then we'll just write the fetch requests right in line inside of app. Any thoughts on that? I'm happy to go either way.
Could you follow this pattern, but also show the detailed fetch and then just comment it out?
Sure. So we can do both. We can do both, and I can show you. Like, this is yes, I can do that. We'll start with a fetch request, and I'll show you. We can do kind of both versions because they're going to be very similar anyway. But this is a pretty common type of thing where we'll take one functionality around a particular action. Maybe it's fetching, maybe you're getting something from an API. Back in JavaScript, maybe it was like updating the DOM or something like that, and extract that and just put a little bit of abstraction around that, just to clean up our code a little bit and for single responsibility principles' sake. Cool. So let's see. So on component mount, I'm using that, by the way. I'm simply importing that class which is what's default exported from that file. And this just looks a little cleaner. Maybe if you don't agree, then you're like, no, it doesn't look any cleaner. It's the same thing. And if you'll notice in utilities, I'm going to split this to the right. My API.get is just this method right here. And all it does is return a fetch that already knows the base URL, takes the URL that I've supplied and added it to it, and already JSONifies the response. That's it. So it just hides away this a little bit. It's not a tremendous gain. You know, it's like one less line of code, because really this would just be, as you mentioned, Sally, it would look just like this. This would be just players. And we wouldn't, and you know, it would be, so this is the difference. And in a GET request, it doesn't look much different, right? It's the post and patch that you can save a few more lines of code. So this is just writing fetch in line. This is using the abstraction. Either way, what's happening is I'm updating, and I'll just hide that for now. I'm updating state. My state right now in app is just that players array. I think that's another change I made before. We were talking about how to move information around. And what I've decided is really state should own the players array, and we'll talk about why as we kind of come around to it here. Wait a minute, this does not look right.
Howard, I have a question for you.
Yep. Oh yeah, this is right. Sorry, go ahead. Chris? Uh-oh. Did I freeze or did you freeze? Can anyone hear me?
You're still live.
Yeah,
Chris,
I can hear you.
Yeah, I think you
I'm
froze.
wondering, can you hear me?
Yep, now I do. Yep.
Okay. So you're exporting default the whole class? I've never seen that done in API.js.
Yep, I'm exporting this whole class. Yep, and I don't even really need to name it here, right? That's not really necessary because it's a default export. So really, the naming happens here. I'm just naming it here so that I'm just naming the class here, just like a function expression, right? You can name a function expression in places where you really never have access to that name, if you want to, just kind of like for readability's sake. But is that what you, so like, yeah, I'm just exporting, but like, if you look, like React is this big object that we're importing, and we're grabbing other exports from that, from this file, right? This React thing that we get. So you have seen something like this. It's just, you just didn't know it, maybe, right? When we import this massive thing, it's a giant object. It's got all these properties. Something similar is happening here, except that I'm just exporting it as a class. I could export it as a big old object, right? If I wanted to, instead of as a class.
Yeah, I'm just impressed with how you've imported it such that you don't have to specify that you're importing get, and you don't have to specify that you're importing post individually.
Right. Oh yeah, and so I could do that, right? I could change this around. Instead of having a big default export, I could have a bunch of smaller exports if I wanted to, and I could also pull from this default export if I built these as properties rather than static properties and methods. Right? If this were an object, then I could pull those objects and destructure them, which is kind of what you're seeing here.
Gotcha.
I could do that too. Yeah, there's a number of ways I could do the same thing.
So Howard, that's all just JavaScript and jQuery.
No jQuery involved whatsoever.
All Java.
Just JavaScript.
Right.
Yeah, not using any jQuery. And nothing against jQuery, just don't need it. I'm building this method, right? I'm building get, I'm building post. I can call this whatever I want. I can call it get fetch. I can call it Howard's fabulous fetch that gets, right? I can call it whatever I want. And then down here, that would be kind of long there, API.Howard's fabulous fetch that gets, but I'm building this method. And what you're seeing here, this is, when you import a library like Axios, it's something like this. Even jQuery, although jQuery uses XHR objects built from their .ajax method, but still, like, it's not a whole lot different. I mean, it's a little different, but same idea. Okay. Okay, so I've got I'm putting my state of players as an array here at the level of app. And currently, if we look at what we get, I've got players and teams. These are links. And I can talk, and I just built this button to be able to see kind of what we can do with history and with router. So let's move on from here. What I'd like to be able to do is have the ability to click on players or like a new player and then teams. And then, so I'd like to have like RESTful routes available to me. And right now, let's start by having one main router. So think of this thing like a controller. Right now, this component app is acting like a controller. It's got a switch statement which says match only one of these routes. And the first one of these routes that matches wins and will show up. So what I'd like is like something like this. I want a player's new, which will render a player's form. And for now, I'm just going to say components, new player form. And I'd also like a player's ID, and I'm going to say jersey number. And unfortunately, when I built my backend, I used snake casing, and so I'm going to continue that just to make life easier for me. Please don't hate. In fact, you can hate because really this should be snake casing or camel case because we're in JavaScript land. But anyway, I used snake casing and I didn't bother to normalize it or change it. So that's going to stay like that for now. And my component here is going to be like my player card, which I don't think I even have yet. I do have. Okay, cool. Oh, good. So I've got a player card here. That looks good. So the idea is what I'm thinking about is I'm setting up these paths that I want to be able to hit. And what if I did, is this going to be a problem? What would match right now if I went to players new? And think right back to Rails or Sinatra.
Create.
What do you mean create?
I'm just guessing.
Oh, so the question is, would these two routes written this way cause a problem? Bear in mind we're in a switch statement, which means that the first route that matches wins. And remember, when we match dynamic URLs, what happens? In other words, if I type in players/new, what will show up here? Any ideas?
An input form?
That's what I want, but why wouldn't it?
I think players has to go at the bottom. Because you've got the exact path players, and I think it will hit that top route and automatically route to that anything that's /players.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to have two of these. It looks like I have two of these. Doesn't matter. That one's fine. Sorry about that. Right? Was that a duplicate? It was. Yeah. Is that what you mean?
Well, no. I thought when you have exact path, if you say /players/25, that will match.
Which route would it match?
I thought it would have matched the top one, exact path.
Well, there's no /25 here, so that wouldn't match. Let's demo this because I think it will make more sense if we're actually watching it. So right now, my player card, I'm not giving it any props, which means I wonder. Yeah, we've got so we've got new player forms not defined. So let me define a component called new player form. New player form.js. And I'm going to use my little handy dandy shortcut here, RSC for a stateless component, new player form. Ooh, you know what? This is going to be a stateful component because I'm going to keep the form data in this one. So class skeleton, CER. Okay, so this is going to be new player form. It's a class because it's going to have state that represents the form. So I'm going to say state equals form data along with basically like all the stuff I need. So these things, just going to copy that for reference. And we need form data is going to be an object. Actually, I don't need, this is going to be the only state. So I'm just going to put it right top level. Name, empty string. Let's see, position, jersey number, birthday, oops, caps, goals, and club. Cool.
Howard, you have a stray thing on, oh, you got rid of it, never mind.
Okay, thank you. By the way, this hanging comma is allowed now in JavaScript in an object or an array, but I don't like it, so I get rid of it. If I remember or I catch it. So I'm just going to say for now, this is the new player form. So we'll see that if this thing renders. And I'm going to go to my player card. And if there is a player, then we show the information. Otherwise, we just say this is the player card, but there's no player. Okay? Is everybody okay with that for now?
Looks
And
good.
if we look at app.js, I've got a route built for players, a route that actually goes to players and grabs those players. I've got a route for what should be a show page. I'm using jersey number as my unique identifier, which of course could be a problem, but for now that's what I'm going to use. And I'm pointing that to player card, although I'm not passing any props right now. That's okay for now. And then players new should render that form, which I now need to import. Import new player form. Okay. And now let's see what happens. So here I am at Teams. And oh, you know what? I never want to type in the URL again. So let's add some nav links. So here's players. Let's add players new. Actually, that'll be the second one. Players new, which will be new player. And then we'll add teams. That's good enough for now. If we, I guess I only need to add the one. Players, yeah, because the player's ID, in other words, this one's going to come from a link somewhere else. So we should have 3 routes now: players, new player, and teams. If I click on teams, we're in the right place. If I click on players, all good. If I click on new player, I got player card. Why am I not seeing the form? And this is what I was talking about. Here's our URL. And if we look, we matched, which one did we match? Remember dynamic routing back from Rails and from Sinatra? What route matched here? It says player card, but no player. Does everyone see which route matched?
Yeah, your line 52.
Yeah, and so what's the rule? Does anyone remember when it comes to declaring our routes?
Yeah, that wild card just sucks in whatever is there, so it never sees the third one.
So yes, that's exactly it. I'm going to say the same thing you just said, Chris. I'm going to say it slightly differently. You have to declare your static routes above your dynamic routes if the pattern matches. So pattern matching static routes must come before their dynamic counterparts. In other words, this pattern is /players /anything, whatever. We don't know what it is. That matches /players /new. So right now it's thinking jersey number. In fact, if we look, I'm going to go here and if we inspect this thing, where are we here? React.
Or you could call it the black hole.
Yeah, well, watch out for the black hole, right? We don't have to fall into the black hole. So if I look at this thing and I look at my player card, remember, why do I see, first of all, these 3 things? We talked about this. What are these 3 things?
Does your props to your router?
Yeah, router props.
Router.
Okay, there's 2 reasons we would see these 3 things. One of them is if we wrap a component in with router, that component will get these props. The other is what? And that's not what's happening here. I'm looking at player card. Player card is not wrapped with router. So why do I have these props if we look at this? It's right here is where it came from.
Well, you have in your export default, you wrapped your app with router.
Yeah, but that doesn't carry through to its children. That's only this only gives those props to app.
Okay.
It doesn't give it to its children, but it has to do with children. What is this component a child of? We can see it right here in the structure. It's a child of what? What's the next parent? What's the parent?
Route.
Players.
Children of routes. Children of React Router DOM route components get props automatically. Now they get them automatically. If you think about JavaScript and you supply something like if you supply a callback function to, like, for example, a DOM action, right? It automatically, when when you give that to whether it's jQuery or just vanilla JavaScript, you give that callback on like a click action, for example, you automatically get the event property passed along. And so when I specify a component here, the same thing is happening. Whatever components this thing would receive are getting passed along to the children automatically, or would give, I should say. And so we can look actually at these props. And the one I'm interested in is match. If we look at match, we get this thing params, right? And just like params you're used to with Sinatra, or I should say with Rack, and which with Rails and both Sinatra, we use params. And notice that we've got jersey number of new. And this is the exact same thing you might have seen in Rails back in the day. You would have seen, or still even, right, if you're not careful with your routes. You would see, can't find a user with ID of new. Remember that? You know, you have a params ID pointing to new because you switched your route order. Remember? Am I talking crazy? No one had that happen? Did no one ever have that happen?
Did not have it happen.
Okay, well, it could happen. And it's a problem, or it can be a problem. So this is the solution. We just make sure that we write our dynamic routes have to come second. Our static routes have to come first. So if I do that and I go back, and now if I go to players new and I look again at the now it's the new player form. Now my match has a empty object of params because there is no dynamic version, there's no dynamic piece of this URL. But now if I go to player like number 12, player card but no player, and if I actually inspect it, I should actually have a, if we look at this thing, a match params of what? Anyone?
Jersey number 12.
Exactly, yes. The key here, jersey number, came from the fact that that's what I called the dynamic piece of the URL here. And the value is what was actually supplied, which could be from a link or from typing in. That statement hopefully resonates and sounds familiar with routing on the back end, because it's the same kind of thing, right? We're just routing on the front end. It's a lot of the same kind of rules. It's just that right now with React Router DOM, React is hijacking. Remember, typing in the URL bar, oh crap, typing in the URL bar should send a new what kind of request?
A GET request.
A GET request, but behind the scenes, React Router DOM and its components that it's giving us, we're hijacking that event. We're not allowing that request to be sent, and React is just handling it all of itself. Okay. So, so now I've got kind of the setup I want, right? I can go to players, new player, and teams, and I'm getting my URL updating, and I'm seeing updated actions, which is great. By the way, if you remember the close of I think the last meeting, the reason that app is listening for this stuff is I've wrapped with router around app. If I didn't, let's just see what happens. If I don't wrap app with router, it's still working. Okay. Oh, there we go. Oh, no, hold on. So this is where, that was where my demonstration was. I no longer have the, on my little button here, I no longer have, which is, where's my handle click? This guy, I'm trying to push to history. And this is what, first of all, I no longer have access to, but even if I somehow were able to do this somewhere else, app might not be listening if I don't wrap it with router. And that's kind of the idea. I need app to be listening for changes to this exact thing in order to update when I use like history.push or something like that. That's the idea. Okay. All right. So we've got players new, players jersey number, and teams. Now I need to build out this form. And we have two options. I can either copy and paste code that I've already written, or we can build it together. Any preferences from the audience?
Why don't you copy and paste since the focus is on the routes?
Okay, and that's what I'd like to do, but I'd also be more than happy to kind of walk through code slowly if anyone's like, you know, I'd really love to see how we do this kind of thing. And
copy and paste and then quickly highlight each critical component.
Well, that's probably not a bad idea. So first I'm going to grab my form, because that's what this thing's actually going to return, as a form. Okay, and it only looks big because there's a bunch of inputs. and I built them so that like the properties are lined up vertically for readability. I'm going to grab, let's see, I need a handle submit in order to be able to pass that along to the form, right? So I'm going to expect that this is going to come through my props. So I'm going to grab it in this manner. And I also need a handle change to be able to update the form as we go. So let's see. Now, whoops. There we go. Okay. Why do I think that handle submit is, well, first let's take a step back and just see what I have here in general. Everyone okay with the fact that this is a form? It's got a bunch of text inputs and a submit input. That's all this thing is. I'm pointing to this handle change method that's here to handle the change for all these text inputs. Every single one's pointing to the same one. And I'm dynamically grabbing the target's name and value as it's incoming. Remember, I said every event gets event. Every event gets event. Every callback to a DOM event, even in React, gets the event object as a property, as an argument. So we call props properties in React argument. So anytime we have a change event happen, the callback is automatically going to get event. I'm destructuring, and I'm actually sort of using not just a single destructuring shortcut, but a nested destructuring shortcut to grab name and value from the event target directly as it's incoming as the argument. And then we should all be pretty familiar, hopefully, with when I set state, I'm dynamically grabbing whatever the name is, which could be name, jersey number, position, birthday, depending on the DOM element that I'm updating, and dynamically grabbing the name, assigning that as the key, which matches my state properties, and assigning the value to whatever's typed in there. I'm turning around and saying that these are controlled components by then supplying that value back to the input itself. Any questions about that?
Howard, if you didn't do the double destructuring, would you, in your list.setState, then do the full event.target.name and then colon event.target.value?
Exactly. I'm glad you asked that. Actually, I think this is worth writing down. Here are two ways of doing identically the exact same thing. In fact, in this case, of course, I don't even need parentheses because it's a single argument on an arrow function expression. And finally, sort of the middle ground would be something like event.target, I guess. Target. These are all the same thing. These are identical, or they should be anyway. I should comment them out and test each one. If they're not, I just made a small syntactical error somewhere. I don't think so though. I think that's right. And so this is like a nested destructuring, a single level destructuring, and just plain old forget destructuring and just grab the event 2 levels deep. So here I have to grab it 2 levels deep in each case, 1 level deep because I'm pulling the target out of the event, and then no levels here because I'm grabbing the name and the value from the target object being destructured, pulled from the event argument, which is an object. I can leave these in as.
Yeah, please leave them in and just comment out whatever.
Yep. So
is it possible in line 14 to omit the target colon?
No, because if I did, you mean like this?
Correct, yeah.
Well, let's find out. No. Let's see if it throws in. So it doesn't like that. It's not, the problem is that event has a bunch of information on it, a bunch of properties. Target's just one of them. And so here, JavaScript doesn't know which sub-property I'm trying to pull. Where am I getting name and value? Where are they coming from? Event is here, then target, and then I've got name and value on target. But like, if I don't specify that target is where I'm getting this stuff, that's my source, then JavaScript is like, I don't know what you mean. So I do need to specify target there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, thank you.
Cool. So now I have a form here, and let's see if we click on new player, we can see this form. That looks great. And I think that's all about the form. The form should be fairly, hopefully self-explanatory. Is everyone okay with this pattern of declaring state as a class field? Or is this throwing anyone off? Be happy to show you both versions of that as well. This is, so React likes to stay sort of on the cutting edge of JavaScript. JavaScript has a class fields property that looks like this. Actually, private fields are coming soon, which look really weird with hashtags or pound signs. Anyway, this is optional, but you don't have to use this. You can use a regular old constructor if that feels more comfortable. By all means, do that and call this .state equals rather than just state equals up the top line here. Okay, so that's our new player form is in place. Well, to some extent. We haven't really supplied it with what it needs, though. A new player form needs this handle submit, which I haven't built yet. And like that shouldn't be too tough to build out. We can either use our API that we've already built with Post, or I can just build it right in line. So if we think about what that looks like in app. By the way, why am I insistent that app is the owner of handle submit? Why is that even a thing? Why don't I just put it in the form?
You got Connect in there, don't you?
I'm not using Redux. This is a Redux free lecture series right now. There's no Redux.
That because all your routes are in app?
So so not sort of, yes, maybe in a roundabout way perhaps. What changes when I submit this form?
The state of the array of players.
Yes, the array of players changes, and I don't want a full page refresh ever, which means that the piece of state I need to manipulate is players. And so that's why I'm going to move that. I'm going to move that handle submit up to the level of where that player's, who owns that player, who owns that piece of state that's getting changed. That's where I'm going to move a method or a function that updates that state. I'm moving it to the level so that the state and the thing that changes the state live in the same place. This is a problem that Redux solves beautifully. But for now, we're not using Redux, so that's why I'm doing that. That's why I'm insistent that handle submit actually lives here. So handle new, and I don't know if I'm going to have other submits elsewhere. So I'm going to say new player submit. It's going to take form data for sure, as well as the event. So event, which means I need parentheses. Events, form data. Okay, and so I'm just going to build a fetch request, and I know that I'm going to go to players, just players, right? And I know that I'm going to need some pretty hefty updates to my options here. For example, I know my method is going to be what?
Post.
Post. And my headers? Headers. Oh my gosh. I do want to specify that I want a JSON response. Even though it might not be, if that's all my server's serving, I may not need this as a header explicitly, but I like to have it here. I like to be verbose about my MIME types, as I think Avi once said. Application JSON. And let's see, what else do I really need here? What do I need to send a post request with fetch?
I think you need a body.
I need a body. And I know that I want basically to JSON.stringify like some kind of a player object. So let's build that player object. What I like to do is, if I'm sending a request to a Rails server, it may, if I send it to a particular controller, I may get that top level key inserted, but I like to be, again, verbose about it. So I'm going to say const players, player, I'll say player object, just to be specific, equals an object whose main key, top level key is player, which points to that form data. Player, that's all I need to point to is the form data itself, sorry, form data. And now I have so if we compare this against the form data that we made, flip this to the right, this gives me an object with a top level key of player. So I have player.name, player.position, player.jersey number, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody okay with that?
Quickly remind me, where does form data come from again?
So I haven't. So let's finish connecting that because we haven't yet. So that's, I should have left that open. Okay. So right now I have a handle submit here, and I actually have connected. We just didn't talk about it yet. I built this expecting to receive an event and the form data I need to build to build a brand new player object on my back end. And that's actually what I've supplied it here, because when I build my onSubmit callback, I'm providing either a function reference or a function expression. The reason I'm choosing an expression is so that I can supply additional arguments. Because if I just did this, if I just said handle submit, because that's the prop I'm getting, right? Actually, I don't know if I've actually passed it down yet. I still need to pass it down, which I'll go ahead and do that here. Well, this is a further discussion. Let's start with the question at hand. My onSubmit, assuming that this handler gets here through props, I could either pass the reference right along. If I do this, though, I'm limiting what handle submit gets as arguments. I'm saying the only thing it's going to get is the event. The automatic arguments, that's what it's going to get, no other information. That's not enough. I need to send the form data along as well. In order to do that, I change this from a function reference to a function expression where I'm actually invoking that function and passing the arguments explicitly whatever I need. And in this case, it is the event because I need to prevent default. Ooh, better do that. While I'm thinking about it, default. So I'm preventing default, and I need to pass along this information. What am I passing along? Exactly this object. That's why I built it that way. So this dot state is this object. What is this object? It's everything I need in object form to create a player. I'm adding the top level key of player just to be extra nice to Rails and say, here you go, you're going to have a top level key of player, and then it's going to point to player.name, position, jersey number, birthday, caps, goals, and club. And that's exactly what my backend is expecting, to build a new player object. Does that answer the question? Still fuzzy. What's up?
No, it's good.
Okay, but we haven't actually made the connection yet to get it from here to my form, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So similarly, I have the option to pass a component along, sort of just reference that component, or I can use render. When I use render, I can pass a function or an expression, and I'm going to say props. And the props argument here is the props that this component would receive based on whatever it is. In this case, as a child of a route, it's automatically going to get the router props. And I want to keep that intact. So right now, I'm going to pass along now, instead of referencing a component directly, I'm saying render, and I'm building a function. The return value is what will get rendered. So what do I want returned? This new player form component. Okay. See the difference? This is if I kind of compare them side by side, I could just say new player form component. So I could just reference the component and automatically get the props I need, or I should say automatically get whatever props would sort of by default be passed along, or I can use render and I can build a method, and not to mention like just whatever this return value is what's going to get rendered. And this is a function expression, which means I have all the power in the world to do whatever I need to do, including logic. I could check auth. I could do all kinds of things right now. And whatever I'm returning is what's going to get rendered. Here I'm using an implicit return because I don't need any logic, or at least not yet. So let me show you a couple things. New player form definitely needs this handle new player submit as a prop. And then I called it handle submit, so let's do that. Handle submit. And it's this dot handle new player submit. That's what I called it here within this particular. That's what I named this function here. I can name it whatever I want as a prop. And I reference that thing. Now let's see what happens here. When we actually render this thing now, line 80 in new player form. What did I do? What? Events, handle submit. Oh, I didn't save it. Okay. So if we look at this form and we inspect it in React, let's see what we have. I've got new player form, and here are my props. History, location, and match. Let's see. If I, is that right? Props, new player form. If I don't pass anything along here, do I still get all that? Oops. New player form. I'm still getting history, location. Actually, I'm surprised. I was thinking I wouldn't get history, location, and match. So I am automatically getting those as props passed along. All right. Oh, no, I'm not. I've got the duplicate here. That's what's matching first. There we go. Okay. So I had that for demonstration, right? I had line 66 in there. So let me get rid of that. Whoops. There we go. And I shouldn't have just saved it again, but okay. Okay, so now if we look at new player form, those props are gone. So just to be clear, and I'm sorry for being confusing there a second ago, or in general. When a moment ago, for comparison's sake, I had this line of code, right? I said, this is what it was, this is what it's gonna be now. And this guy up here was getting the history, the router props because it's a child of a route. I don't want that. This is what I actually want to do now. I'm not saying I don't want those props, but what I want to show you is if I'm rendering, now I'm being very explicit about the props that new player form is receiving. I am taking control of it. And so now new player form only has the handle submit function. That's it as a prop. If I do want those history match and location props, router props to pass along, I can simply do something like this. I'm going to name the argument that I would be getting or that I'm automatically getting. These are the props that I would get as a child of a route. And I'm just going to now use the spread operator to say, hey, give me all those things as props. And now when we reload and I look at that form again, I should say the new player form component, I get them back, history, locations, and match. And if I needed to, I could pull only pieces of that, right? If I only need history, I could just grab history or just grab location or just grab match if I wanted to. But now I have my handle submit function. It's there. This is, life is looking good. So let's kind of take a step back. We've got players, new player, teams, and really, I don't like that players is this list. I want this players to be links so that we can actually have player show pages. So that's kind of like the next refactor. It's 10 minutes. I could stay is anyone available to stay a few extra minutes past 8 o'clock?
I am.
Okay, so we might push a few extra minutes. On this, what we still need to do right now, sorry, I don't know if that was Chris. Good. Okay.
Howard, I'm in if you want to go longer.
Okay. We might do that. So what I still need to do is, first of all, make sure that this works. So I actually have I have a Wikipedia page open. Hopefully Wikipedia is accurate. With where's my roster? There it is. With my recent call-ups. So I'm actually putting real people in here, I guess. So let's see if Emily Fox with a Jersey number, I don't know. Now this is a problem because I shouldn't be relying on something like Jersey number as a unique identifier. So I'm just saying Emily-Fox. Hopefully that'll work. Merit, whoops. This is position. She is a defender. She is July 5th, 1998. Good Lord. Oh. And 0 club is NC Tar Heels. Okay. Before I submit this, I want to make sure that this looks good. So if we look at our app, we've built our player submit. Okay, this is not actually everything I want yet. So I've got my player object. My fetch request looks like it's built. For now, I'm going to say .then, and basically, I know I need to take my response and JSONify it. And finally, this is where stuff needs to happen. And my question is going to be, assuming that we have player JSON here, player JSON, what needs to happen here? suppose that I successfully create a new player, I submit this form, and I get a response back telling me that I have successfully created a player. What do I need to do? First of all, do I want to stay here?
No, you probably want to do your history push to like your show page.
Exactly. And so I can grab history. I could reference it directly because it's this.props. I have it available, by the way, because of with router. So I could just say this.history.push. I could grab it history alone if I wanted to. I'll just do it, I guess, a little bit sort of longhand. This.props.history.push. Now, where do I want to go? Sorry, Sally, if you said that already.
To the show page, so whatever player, then jersey number.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm going to interpolate that brand new players. I'm going to call it new player. I don't like player JSON. New player. There we go. New player. Player dot jersey number. There we go. Okay, but does this route? Okay, and this route exists. That's good.
No.
What's that?
Well, do we need to pop the player onto the players array?
Yes, that's the other thing that needs to happen. Exactly. Good, good, good. So one thing that needs to happen was update the URL. And the other thing, as Chris just mentioned, is update state, right? How do I do that? With our old friend, this.setState. And then there's two ways that I like to do this. Either one's pretty much fine with me. I can either use concat or I could use the spread operator. To me, those are pretty darn similar. I could also use slice if I wanted to, but I like it. I think this one's fine. Is everyone okay with this? Concat is non-destructive, so I'm allowed to do this. This is legit. Everybody okay with that?
All good.
Okay. So I've reset my route and I've called setState. Do I need to reset my form? That's a tricky question. So feel free to guess and don't feel bad if you don't get the answer right or wrong or whatever. Do I need to reset the form?
Well, don't you need to clear the form? Which is
you would think so, right? But
maybe not, because you're moving to a different page.
Yeah, so if I move to a different page where that form component is no longer being rendered, what life cycle is it going through?
Component unmount.
Yes, it unmounts. When a component unmounts, what happens to its state?
It disappears.
Yes. And so notice, because if I had given app the form data and app owned the form data, yes, I would have to clear it. But the fact that new player form has its own state, and when it unmounts and then mounts again, right, it goes through a full new life cycle of getting born again, so to speak, the state gets reset to its initial state. And really, like, it's not even that the state gets reset, it's just gone, and then a brand new version comes in with its own initial state. Like, that's really more of like what's actually happening, right? So I don't have to in this case. But if Redux owns the form data, if your current component owns the form data, if for whatever reason the new form doesn't disappear off the page, maybe I have it locked in place down in the lower right corner or something and I never want it to disappear, then I need to reset it. But in this case, I don't have to. Good thought. Good stuff, guys. Okay, so new player submit. So now we should update, go to the new place, and let's just make sure now, what's the problem here? Anyone see a problem here? What does my player card need? Why is this a class? This should not be a class.
I think it needs some kind of player ID.
Well, even more than that, what does it need? It needs all this information, right?
Oh, yeah, we're not in React, we're not Redux land. Yeah,
We're not in Redux land. Is that better? Is that okay? No render. Just return. There, that's better. I don't know why that was stateful, or why that was a class component, sorry. Okay. All right, so yeah, if this, right now, I'm set up to handle it, right? But right now, this player is not coming down. And really, I know it needs to be player, so I'm just gonna go ahead and destructure it this way, because that's what's gonna happen. So I'll get rid of all these props dot. in this dots. Okay, that looks much, much better. Oh. Okay, all right, so in order to go to one of these player cards, this player card, and see the information, the player card needs that prop. So how can I, right now, what information do I have in my hand at this moment in time? So I'm standing in the app component, and I've got my state of the players array. I've got a brand new player that with an ID that I just added to that array, and I'm pushing history here. So what information do I have, and how can I use it so that this player card component receives the exact player that it needs? Think about array methods and JavaScript. What information do I have? How can I get that exact information to where it needs to be?
Well, would you use like the spread operator to add to the state?
I already added to state.
That. Yeah.
I could have used spread, right? I could have done.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Don't you have to pass in players in the component to player?
A player, right? Singular prop, right?
Right.
That's what this thing needs. But which player?
The player with the ID from the jersey number.
Yeah, and that's what I'm using as my dynamic the dynamic piece of this route. So how can I then? So remember, instead of components, we have the option to do render. And with render, I can pass in a function. And remember, that gives us tremendous power. Okay, so what do I want to do inside this function? Find the player. Add that player as a prop. That's it. So let's find the player. How can I find the player? And this is where maybe we're not sure, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab props. And right now, I'm going to console log the props. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go to players/12. I go to my console. Here's my props. Whoa, oh my gosh, what happened? What route? Oh, hold on. Oh, okay, fine. So return. Here's your stinking return value. Okay, so now I'm going to do it again, and we'll actually see. Here's your stinking return value. So here's the history location match. What I'm interested in is match. Match has params, right? So match params has the jersey number and the value, right? So what if I do something like this? Well, what if how would I find that player? Given that I have access to the jersey number as a key and a value, how would I find that player?
Well, it wouldn't be something like player ID equals match.params.jersey number?
Yes. Okay, so const player, I'll say jersey number equals, and this is a good start, match props.match.params.jersey number, like that, right? So
right.
Let's see what that is. Console log.
Probably a mess.
Player jersey number. Player, oh my gosh, player jersey number. There it is, okay. So let's see what that is. If we refresh the page, we should see 12. There it is, great. If I go to fish, we should see fish. Okay, or whatever, that's gonna show up, right, hopefully. There it is, right? And this is just like routing on the back end, sort of. In that I'm adjusting the dynamic piece and I'm seeing that reflected, and this is how I have access to it. So now what do I want to do with this now that I have the player jersey number? The jersey number is not the only thing that the player card needs. The player card needs the whole shebang.
Would you do a find on the array?
Yes, right? So we have access to the state, and it's the state of players. So how could I do that, Chris?
I would do state.players.find. Yeah, you needed this. I think I would do player.jersey number triple equals player jersey number.
Exactly. Now I have the player, hopefully, and I actually want to save this into a variable. Const, guess what I'm going to call it? Player, right? Why not? So now let's console log player. This one's going to be undefined, hopefully. Hopefully we don't have a player with that kind of a jersey number. But if we go back to something halfway normal, like 12, there we go. It's Tierna Davidson. There she is, right?
Nice.
With jersey number 12. Let's see, who's number 30? Is there a number 30? I don't know if there is. I'm just guessing. Undefined. Okay, fine. How about 11? There must be an 11. I was jersey number 11 in my soccer team growing up. There we go. Ali Krieger. She's number 11. We're jersey number twins. Okay, so now I have that player object, and now I simply can pass it along as a prop. So instead of returning here's your stinking value, what I actually want to return, of course, is the player card. Player card. And I know I want to give it at least this information. So player equals player. Get rid of my console log. Clean this up just a hair, so I could just say, well, I guess this is okay, right? I could collapse this. Whoops! I could collapse this into like one line if I wanted to, but this is like a nice way of saying first we're going to grab it, then we're going to find the player. I could clean this up a little bit by grabbing just match from my router props, and I could even grab just match jersey number if I wanted to, or just match params, excuse me. And so now I could do this. That doesn't really clean it up a whole lot. And the other question is, do I want those router props down to player card? Does player card need them at all? And I think the answer is no. So I actually kind of think I like this. Let's see if that works. Let's see if we still get Ali Krieger showing up here. We do, and there she is. There's her information. So this seems like good news, I think. I really should label those, huh? It's hard to tell what's what there. We'll say position, B-Day, caps. Those are the ones that are hard to read. Goals, and club. And so now Ali Krieger shows up. And I forget who was number 12. Tierna Davidson shows up. Now, this is a little bit of a problem though, because what do I always say? Like, you don't ever have to force them to type in the URL. So now when we go to players, I don't want to see all this information. I just want to see links. So let's go figure that out. So if we go to players, right now I'm rendering player cards. No more. Get rid of player card. No, I still need, no, I don't. I don't need player card at all. I do need link. So basically what I want to do is I still want to map through these players. I still want all the players available to players. But what I really want is just to form links. And the key is just going to be p dot, let's just do jersey number. The player is going to be p. No, I don't do that. Wait, what am I doing? They're links, so it does still want a key, that's all. But what property do I need for a link? That's really what I want to know.
Link 2?
2. I need 2. And 2 can be a number of things, but at least of all, it can be just a string. And I think that's all that we really need here. And how do I then, how do I determine where I'm actually going? Where do I need to go?
Jersey number, I think you need.
Exactly. So I'm going to interpolate p.jersey number. Just like that. And now, hopefully, if we did that right, we didn't screw anything up, we should see, well, hold on, maybe not. Players.map.
You got to put the name.
Thank you. Thank you. You're exactly right. So then I'm returning, that's not a closing, the link is not a self-closer. I do want the name here. So I'm going to where am I? I'm inside of JSX, so I should just be able to say p.name, and then close my link. Thank you. That's exactly right, hopefully. And there they are, and that looks terrible. So unfortunately, so CSS would come to the rescue here. I could style my link so that somehow this doesn't happen. I'm going to totally cheat. I'm going to turn this into a fragment. Is everyone okay with fragment syntax? Shorthand fragment? This just means I want to return multiple DOM things, right? A link and a break is what I want here. But I don't want to wrap it in anything else like a div. So I'm just going to use fragment tags to enclose and to encapsulate this thing. I could also just say react.fragment and import. I could just do it this way as well. Whoops, react, oh gosh, dot fragment. I could do that. The shorthand is simply an empty set of opens and closers. That's what that is. And that way I can tag my break, which needs to be self-closing. And now I should be able to see them nicely vertically, which is much, much nicer. And then when I click on one, there she is. Great. Go back to players. I can click on another. Go back to players. Click on another. This seems like good news. So I can build a player. I can look at my players. I can click on a particular link. I can go to teams. And this is pretty good. Like this is pretty much where I wanted to get to by the end of tonight. There's one more thing I would like to show, and that's the fact that, like, suppose I actually wanted this list of players to show up on the left, and I wanted like a player card box on the right. And in other words, when I click on a player, I don't want to have to go back to players to choose another one. And this is going to be total audience vote. We can go through that and look at that. That's like another. So let me just describe what I have here in terms of sort of what the functionality here is. Here I have a single component app that's acting like my main controller. And I have a switch statement here that this chunk of app, what it's rendering, is going to be one of these 5 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. Okay. One of those 5 things, no more. And that's fine if that's the way I want it. In other words, this one container is always going to be one of those 5 things. But what if I want to show other things and I just want one component, in other words, to change of itself? So you could do that. In other words, I can split my routing to other components. So I could actually, players would be the example here. I could render players, which is this list. And I could always have that showing, and then dynamically, again, through players, route a different component, right? So the question is, does anyone want to stick around? It'll take about 15 minutes, I think, to do that. If we don't, we'll wrap it up right now.
I'm willing to stay.
Okay, that's all I need is one, so we'll do it. What's that? Okay, so we'll do it then. So who's complaining about this? Players, keys. Each child list should have a unique key property. Where is that? Oh, I see what it's saying. Screw that. I don't care about that right now. So here's what we're going to do. Well, first of all, there's one other thing I want to mention, which is why Navlink is kind of cool. Right now, we don't necessarily see where we are. This is a little bit of a sidetrack, but not entirely. Navlink gives us the opportunity to sort of automatically, if we want to, choose where we are within the application. That was a weird way of saying that. Let me say that again. Navlink allows us to show the user where they are and style the active link in a particular way of our choosing, of course. And so the way we can do that is we can use, if I inspect this thing real quick, if I look at React, I inspect my nav links up there. Notice that there's an active class name property. I can set that to whatever I want. It's automatically active, which is totally fine. So if I come down here to app.css, I could do something like active, because that's the class that was provided, and say that like color green. Okay, so now let's see what happens. If I click on Teams, Teams turns green. If I turn on New Player, wait a minute. New Player and Players turn green. That's weird, right? Like I'm only on one or the other. If I click on Players, it's just Players is green. If I click on New Players, they're both green. If I click on Teams, Teams is green. And that's because, similar to route, if we want to differentiate routes with similar patterns, like both of these have players as a pattern, then I need to add exact as well. And so back to app, in my nav links, I could say something like exact. I could just do that. There we go. And now, hopefully, when I click on one, only one of these at a time is green. And so that's something that NavLink offers that ActiveLink doesn't, and it makes sense because in a nav bar, we would always have that nav bar showing, and we're only on one or the other, as opposed to a link where we click it and go somewhere else. So that's kind of the idea. That's why it's called NavLink versus just link. So now let's think about how we can take players and let players be its own controller as well, sort of like a little sub-nested route. So let's do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to steal the routes that match players, right? Players still needs to exist here, but I'm literally just going to snip them out of there and now put them inside of routes inside of players and do something very, very similar. So I always want to show this, right, as my options. And I'm going to wrap these things in a switch as well. So I'm going to grab switch. And I'm going to wrap my routes in a switch. Switch, there we go. Close my switch. Okay, indent. Maybe, no, maybe, there we go. And let's see, I probably broke some stuff. That's okay. Not that though. Is that? Oh, crap. What did I break? Parsing error, JSX tag end where? So route opens here. That should be the self-closer. Wait, no, it's not. What did I grab in app? Did I grab too much or too little? It doesn't look wrong. All right, so I'm just going to undo that. What did we? That's where we were. Are we okay? Yes, okay.
Try one at a time.
Yeah, I guess so. So then let's see. So let's grab players new, cut it out of there. Whoops, paste that into our players. I'll build my switch first. Switch, link, switch. Cool. So there's that one route. Okay. Any problems? Yes. Route is not defined. It's because I need to add it. Okay. The player form is not defined. I don't need it in app anymore. Okay. Can't find new player form. That's because it was an app. Okay. Okay, that looks okay. Now, it didn't like the other one that I cut somehow. Route opens up here, and it closes here. What is this? I feel like this might actually be wrong. I feel like this might, how could that not be a problem though? So let's see, route opens up here. I have render. So that's, oh, right, okay. So there's the closing of the render method, which actually should also be the closing of, I think these are actually extraneous. How is that not causing a problem, right? That looks better, doesn't it? I think so. Let's see if that causes trouble. Yeah, I think that was it. Hopefully, let's find out. Okay, just space them out a little bit so we can see. Great, player card is not defined. So I don't need that in app anymore either. Okay, also not in components. Okay. Good, that is all looking okay. And let's see what's happening if we go to new player card, but no players. Okay, fine, team. So let's go back and look. And now let's adjust these routes and kind of think about what we have inside of here. There's no more this. So I know that players now needs handle submit. Handle new player submit, I mean. Passed as a prop, because I need to be able to pass that along. So players, and so let's see, handle submit. Oops. And I'm just going to open this up. Hopefully that makes it a little more readable. This is getting a little bit unwieldy. There. Okay. So route exact players render handle submit. There we go. Okay, so handle submit is going to be this dot handle new player submit. So now passing that to players so that players can pass it down to, it's no longer this. Players can pass this along to the new player form. I'm going to pull that from the props now that I'm getting. So handle new players submit. Oops, just handle submit is all I'm calling it, sorry. Handle submit. Probably should call it new player submit, but just because I don't know what else might happen here, but that's okay. For now, that's enough. Like for example, if I added an edit route, handle submit might be a little vague. I might want to actually distinguish between one or the other. But for now, that should work. So now if I look at new player, and it's still not working quite right. So route exact match players new. Handle submit and props, that's okay. Players jersey number, so match. We should be getting match because I'm spreading on props, but I'm not grabbing it here. So I need to grab match. And
Don't you need to take this out of line 20?
yep, so there is no more this dot state. I'm surprised that wasn't actually causing a problem or like an error instead of just saying it wasn't working. Are there any other this references? So we should now have match, which is now available here, and I guess in both ways. So it wouldn't really matter, I think, whether I actually don't necessarily maybe need to destructure it here, because this match is coming from the fact that this one's now going to be the child of a route as well. So match is, I'm pulling it from the argument here. Again, I don't know if this is more readable, then we'll do it this way. And cool. Okay, I think that's it. So now let's see what happens. Okay, sorry that route doesn't match. And let's see, players new. Okay, players. Now, what if I go to players? Players is working, right? Players is working, and that's matching this, and it's rendering players. What if I go to like players 12? Sorry, that route doesn't match. So what was I doing before on this particular route that I shouldn't do anymore? So what I'm doing is I'm saying now players is going to take control of its own stuff. So like whatever RESTful things are going to happen amongst players is no longer going to be handled from app, but rather from the player's component itself. It's becoming like a controller of itself, of its own resources. So you can actually split these routes amongst whichever sort of resource you want. So what, if we look at this, if we examine this route, what about it needs to change?
Well, do you take props out?
Well, let's see. So let's see, props. I'm still getting props. I still want to grab along. I don't know if I think I can do that. Hopefully I can do that. I'm not sure actually. Let's see if that just broke things. So I still probably want to pass along the props. I'm passing along. These are going to be like the browser props that are coming down to this thing. And so let's see, players 12. So if we match players, we match this route, then that's good news. We come down, we should be rendering this guy, which is rendering our list, right? Or is it not? It's not, right? Wait a minute, that's actually curious. Why am I not? What component? So like what component is showing up here? This route doesn't match. Did we match any of these? And the thing I'm trying to point out is like, if I go somewhere that's not just /players, I still want this thing to render, right? So what if I remove exact? You see what happened there? Who's like, hold on, what did you just do? Like who?
Why does exact, removing exact, is that because you're bumped over to the other component?
Right. So like to be clear, and here's what I should have done first. If we just go to /players, and first let me put exact back. So I'm going to put exact back here. If I put exact back and I just click on players, I see my players. But if I try to go to like new player, that route doesn't match. Or if I try to go to like if I click on a player's show page, that route doesn't match. And that's because app is re-rendering because it's listening to props, to the router props. And when app re-renders, it's looking at the path. And once that path has anything else but players past it, it's like, that's not an exact match. So I'm not rendering this. But I need it to render because this is now owning all of everything under players. And so this is why we don't, oh my gosh, there we go. Uh-oh, what'd I do? Exact is not always something you want there. Right? If I turn this over to players and say, players, here hey, players component, you handle everything having to do with players. Then I don't want exact anymore because I want everything that starts with players to now be handled inside of this component. So now if I save that, wherever I go that starts with players will now route to this component, and it's taking care of its own. So it's taking care of, right now, that only means either the new form or the show player form. But now that should work. Right? Now I can click on these things, and unfortunately it's sort of this vertical thing, and if I want to fix that, I could just give my players class a class of like players, and so I want them to show side by side, so I'm going to use flex. So if I go to app.css and I say dot players, I want players to be, what is it, display flex and flex direction row, and maybe I want to shrink those massive font size, those massive links down to like 10 pixels or something. And now, and maybe I want to add, where are those? Why would those be rendering as? Those should not be children of. So it's thinking these are all children. That's not what we want. So then maybe if this is wrap this in a div. So right now, these are all top level children. I need this mapping to be nested so that it doesn't pick up on the flex. So let's just wrap it in a div. And now that should pick up the div as flex and move all my players over there. And I don't want that. I don't need this giant players thing anymore. There. Okay, so now I have kind of like this little nav bar, so to speak, like this other nav on the left where I can choose, I can click on any of these links. It's updating my URL, and app is re-rendering, but it's handing anything having to do with players over to the player component because I'm no longer matching on exact. So anything having to do with players, if it starts with players, now it's going over to players, and players is taking care of whatever it needs to. And so this is really nice. And this is infinite, by the way. I could nest this as many times as I want. This is only one level deep in terms of taking a component as like not just routing every single route, but you can route like to a particular resource and let that thing take care of its own resources from there, right? So you can use those beginnings of the URLs. And if we look at, for example, let's see, if we look at, by the way, I could do the same thing here. I'd turn these into nav links. I think that'd be nice, actually. Let me do that real quick. So this is going to be nav link. Cool. If I do that, now the CSS that I added, whoops, navlink is not defined. Of course it's not. Okay. So now I should see not only will like where I am on the main nav up here show up, but also the player will show up in a green color, which is nice, I think, anyway. Or I could do whatever styling I want. I just turned it green so you can see that that's what that's doing for us, which helps us kind of see where we are. And anything that helps me see where I am at any given moment in time is a good thing, I'll tell you that. Navigation is good. So notice that, like, even though I have my list of players here, I can, anything having to do with players, now I take care of in this little box here. I could add an edit form. I could add a delete button or whatever, but I could always go back and just look at any player I want to. Okay. One component that we didn't talk about that comes from React Router DOM is today or last time, I don't think, is redirect. And redirect is kind of like, I just want to mention it. If I wanted to grab a redirect, let's just show a quick example. Redirect. If I wanted to do like a redirect would be somewhere on this, let's just say this render, which is this player's new. I want this one. So, okay, so what if I want to say return, I'm going to wrap this in a ternary. And I'm going to say, is my player jersey number equal to 12? If so, then render, no, how about not equal to 12? There we go. If it's not 12, then show the player card. Otherwise, redirect. And redirect is a lot like link, right? Redirect to, and I'll say, I don't know, this is totally contrived, this example, but let's just go to, I don't know, teams for whatever reason, just for the sake of showing this thing. Why do I have an extra? Oh crap. There we go. So hopefully, if I didn't break the syntax there. So the redirect is like, and maybe this is like, is the user logged in? Are we authorized? Does something make sense? If something, if so, show the thing. Otherwise, go somewhere else. So if we didn't screw that up, crap. Okay, what do we do? Turn. What is it telling me? Unexpected token. Where? Player jersey number, jersey, return. Oh, I don't need I'm inside of the function. I don't need JSX tags there. There we go, right? There. Okay, so who was number, crap, does anyone remember who was number 12? I think it was Tierna. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. Redirect. All right, so I'm not, this is, let's see, redirect to teams. So wait, did this never, I'm actually getting the tag there, so that's obviously not showing false. Oh, duh.
I think it was Alyssa.
It's a string, right? I think. There we go. So, there we go. So, so if I go to players, and I click on Abby, I can see her. Allie, I can see her. But if I click on Tierna, I go to teams. Okay. So like redirect is just that. It's an opportunity to fire a redirect and say, no, you're not allowed to see that. You can't do that, right? And so there's a number of times when you might want to redirect if something went wrong inside. Well, you use history.push inside of like a function, but somewhere inside of a render, maybe this would be, again, like an auth check is really one of the only things I can think of. Or if something else is wrong here, basically, instead of rendering the thing we were going to show, we'll go somewhere else, right? So you can think of any number of applications for that. So I just wanted to mention redirect because we didn't talk about it yet. By the way, this is the tip of, even though this is round 2, this is still tip of the iceberg in terms of what you can do and what's available with React Router DOM. So I encourage you to check out the React Router DOM training stuff. There's a lot more stuff online, a lot more resources you can check out. Any questions about anything we talked about today, about the code, about what we did, how we got to where we are, and of course I don't poor poor Tierna is probably like watching this like, oh my gosh, why is that guy so mean? No, I don't want to redirect if we're looking at Tierna. So let's do that. Cool.
Hey, Howard,
Yeah.
when you did the post, you used the traditional old style post.
Yep, I just use traditional old style. Yep. Do you want to see the other way?
Yeah, can we use the new Howard technology?
Sure. It's not Howard technology. It's technology that existed way before Howard and is used loosely well at best. So basically, I still want to build my player object, but this is the part that we're going to kind of do something else with. So I'm just going to comment it out for now. And what I would do is I already have API. I'm already importing it. So I could do something like, I know I want an API.post. And API.post needs 2 arguments, a URL and data. The URL is just /players. And notice that the URL is coming from the base URL. So /players because it's a post request, so post players. And the data. So the data I need to pass along is just that player object. And notice that what I do with that is I grab, I deconstruct my headers, right? And I use the data that's incoming to just straight up JSON.stringify it. So what I know is I want whatever that object sent as data to the backend, I want to build it exactly how I want it to be before I post it. So I do still do that over here. And then I post players, player object. What's returned then is the .then. The first .then is already JSONified, as I like to say, or whatever. And then I just need this stuff, right? Then it is all the same as that, as this. Oops, I just copied an empty line. This remains the same. But now I'm already at the level of, I've been JSONified, so I have usable data now on this return. So I push state and I set, or I push, whoops, no. I go somewhere else and I set my state. I could do these in different order if I wanted to, by the way. And of course, by the way, a lot of this is very shortcutted. I really should be paying attention to my response and splitting my response based on whether it's successful or unsuccessful, doing one thing if it's successful. If it's, for example, if it's unsuccessful response, I really don't want to push state. I want to stay on that form. And if I stay on that form and I don't re-render, then those that data will stay there. And maybe I want to send a message or alert a message saying, with that information I get back from Rails, hey, this is what you did wrong, change this. And that might be nice as well. But anyway, so it should look like this. And if we didn't break anything, no promises. Let's see if it works. So new player, I'm gonna grab the next player on the roster that's getting pulled up is gonna be Jaleen Hinkle. So Jaleen Hinkle. See, this is tough because the call-ups don't have jersey numbers. So I'm just sort of building a little hacky slug, basically. Position, she's a defender. Birthday, May 28th, 93. She's got 8 caps, no goals.
Fix that year.
Thank you. She's from the future. She's amazing. And she plays for the NC Courage. Let's see what happens. There we go. Seemed to work. We look at our network. We had a good request. Came back. Everything's good. We're in business. Okay. So it's just, you can compare. Here's so this, which is 42 to 51. Math, man, I don't know. What is that, 10? Something like that, versus 53 to 67, or 68, which is like 15 or 14, I guess, 53 to 67. So, whatever, 9 versus 10 lines, 9 versus 14 lines of code. But I think this looks a little cleaner. You can also use async await if you wanted to, but now is not the time to get into that because it's time to end the session. Unless there are any questions, which I'm happy to answer before we do.
Howard, are you going to post the code for this?
Yes. In fact, it's already posted. It's already posted. There's a demo branch and a demo 2 branch. The demo branch is the version where they're So before we submitted, before we went nesting to players, or gave players like its responsibilities, that was the demo branch. And the demo 2 looks like this, where we go ahead and give players responsibility over all of its own routes.
Yeah, can you put that in Slack so we can find it?
Yeah. So let's do that. If you want, you can have the back end too. There are separate repos.
Yep.
But the back end is just serving players, and I added some extra stuff thinking maybe I would do more than I did. Git remote. But I didn't, at least not yet. So this is, you want the Slack? You want me to put it in Slack right in the channel? I can just put it right in the channel.
Whatever's easy.
I'll just put it right in oh, Babs graduated. Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah, just put in the Slack channel.
Okay, so router, lecture, code. Okay, yep, I'll do that. Cool. Any other questions? Well, thanks all for your attendance. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with me for an hour and a half on a Tuesday evening. I'm going to stop to share, stop screen sharing, stop recording.